On to video number 3. Video 2 got cut off at the very end. You could find it on our YouTube page, and if you do go there, please like and subscribe. I will have content that's unique and exclusive to YouTube because of the format. It's a lot friendlier. So that said, moving on. So if you've noticed, a lot of the material that I'm discussing, some of you will say, well, I get it. It's pretty simple. It makes sense. The idea with everything we're doing with ISR Matrix Police Jiu-Jitsu is that in the end, it is 9 techniques that are utilized as 9 tactics that are then serving us as 9 principles and concepts. And those things are what develop and interchange with one another, and it doesn't go any further than that for our A.B.C.s. And typically what I do in a 40-hour course is I start with some of the same material initially, so it's understood cognitively. So the way we all learn is we'll communicate verbally, but no matter what we're teaching. And this is regards to anything that's physical as well. So this can go for any physical activity you're teaching, from sports to anything tactics in law enforcement or military, or any physical thing. It could be even dance. The way it works is you explain things first. So the person in their head is like, they're imagining, each person does it their own way. They're cognitively in their head listening to what you're saying, and they're trying to get as much of it as possible out that way. Some of us zone out. We don't really go there at all when it's something physical. We just want to rep it out and physically jump in there. But most of us, to some degree, it's a spectrum obviously, will analyze what the person is saying. Again, on that same spectrum, you'll have recruits and students and in-service people that are very, very intellectual. And the second you verge off of that, they're a little bit confused and they're trying to go back to that format they had in their head of what you said verbally. So when we teach this material, it's also very simple. The terminology is simple. We keep it to those 9 things, and then we explain what they're going to be as we teach. Now, you're going to see that after I get past this initial series. And going back to my course, typically I'll start cognitively in a room on a dry erase board because I still don't know how to do PowerPoints well. And I'll sit there and I'll do everything old school style. And then I'll break from that, and then I'll start throwing metaphors and analogies. I'll start discussing the job, the industry, what it is to teach DT, and then we get some feedback. As soon as we're done with that, we'll go right to the mat and I'll teach. The following day, I'll go back and review the same material, and then you can see all the light bulbs going off because now it makes sense. All of it is simple because it's so simple. If I just said these are the 9 techniques, which is typically what happens over the years that I've watched on social media, is people will take those techniques and then apply them incorrectly because they're not getting the rest of the material. So what I'd like to do and continue doing is, these are 9 simple things, but I'm building on all the things behind them. So when you're done, you're like, I get the 9 simple things that much better now, and I'm not going to drift from them. Because the biggest thing that happens when you're talking techniques, that's why I don't emphasize them as the main thing, is you think that's what they are, and then when you reach a problem, you try to create another technique for that problem. And we've all done it and we all do it, and I still see the industry flooded with it. Different people's opinions about what techniques apply here, or here's 10 more different variations of different techniques you can use for this. It doesn't help, going back to everything I've already said. So we start off with cognitive. Then when I put them in on the mat, I want them to get associative. This is just basic education science. So then they start associating what I said verbally physically. They start off with really basic drills. We're all familiar with this. And then they're putting it together and they're letting the body learn, because ultimately the body is what is learning. The body is itself a system that is learning. So you're trying to, the body being like hardware, you're trying to download this software that's also a system into it, and the more they gel, the better. So we're clear on that. That associative thing will continue to add more and more to it, and it'll become more complex until it's autonomous, which is our goal. They can free flow, they can improvise, they can address different things. So how we get that across is called spiral learning, which is something I've developed over my career. It's the way I learned to learn, because my typical day was everything from teaching peewees and little dragons, ages 5 to 7, to kids, to teenagers, to then adults, different sports. Different combat arts. And then I'd have my competition team. Then I'd have weekends. I'd be teaching seminars on specific things. Then I'd go away for a week for law enforcement. Then I'd be on a base for 2 weeks. And that was my cycle. And eventually I learned how to teach everyone back to back. in a way that was really easy for me and got the material across. So this is a universal way to teach and learn yourself. It's called spiral learning. And what it basically means, and yeah, now we've started with charts. Sorry, so we're gonna start having charts up and then I'll start explaining it as much as I can. Spiral learning means we're gonna get those 9 things. On this chart, I have it as 3 because it's 3 phases, 3 stages, 3, 3, 3, 9. The 9 techniques will be what never changes in the ABCs. It's a vertical line. It's just go from the beginning. Everyone learns 3 intercepts, 3 stabilize, 3 resolutions, and we build each one of those techniques up the same spiral. So you have 9 spirals for each thing. And then you unite them, let's say 1 intercept, 1 stabilizer, 1 resolve, that's 3, and that becomes the vertical line. Or you want to go play with all the intercepts, all 3 of them, that's the vertical line. And what we're trying to do with the vertical line is stay as is so we get a core set. It's our core set of techniques. So in your head, think about the 9 things we're going to be teaching with ISR Matrix Police Jiu-Jitsu. Those 9 things are at the foundation, a dot on that vertical line. That we're not moving from that core. That core is our skill sets. So when we do skill building, it's off of that line that goes all the way up. It stays the same. It always stays the same. It never changes. And then the more we go up that vertical line, the greater understanding we have and the greater depth we build, okay? From those same 9, we're going to slowly apply it to more different drills. So a variety of drills goes wide. So those drills takes those 9 things and gives us different applications for them. So an arm drag could be used in endless different ways, in endless different patterns, and different energies, right? So different things we feel we can use arm drags for. So we continue with the applications wider with those 9 things. So those 9 things are the breadth. So we build depth through the vertical, we build breadth through the horizontal. The horizontal line that you're seeing here is basically greater applications. You get more and more applications as you widen that foundation out this way. And then from that, there's like a lot more change, and you can add more dynamics, you can add more pressure, you can add more resistance, you can bring in different scenarios, different variables, but you keep the 9 the same. So again, common sense, the more we repeat these same 9 things for everything. So no matter what we're working here, we're working the 9. No matter what we're working here, we're working the 9. You start building that spiral that goes this way. The more it goes up, the greater applications. The more each individual brings into this, the faster they can go up that vertical line. Now, if we've been doing this for a year and someone else has been doing it for a few weeks, we have a wider top on that line. Not only have we gone further up, we've applied it to more things. So when we look down, that width is a bigger horizontal line. So we might start off with a line this thin, and as we go up, the line gets this wide going up. Same exact material, way more applications, way more depth of understanding on those same 9 things. So obviously you can read through this. We can get those 9 things and apply it to the entire A.B.C.s as far as subject control, apprehension, and arrest for active resistance. We can do that solo, or we can do that with teams. These 9 spirals then become 1 spiral. And those are the light bulb moments you start getting. And the idea of that is, we've all talked about, better to have a few techniques done 1,000 times than 1,000 techniques done very few. This is what I'm trying to get at. But the spiral learning I will actually do with lesson plans, so it's a lot more clear. As we start moving through these drills and these patterns, we start connecting the different ones together. So we'll use certain intercepts with certain stabilizers with certain resolutions, and we'll change it up. And then 9 things becomes 126 or whatever it is. And then that changes depending on the individuals and their own attributes and what they're bringing to the table. Then we can add other variables, and this is the important part. So we go from this raw A.B.C.s core, and then we start bringing in everything from teaching OC, batons, transitions, weapon retention, weapon deployment, everything that you can do in an academy. We work off the same 9 things. So no matter what day recruits come in, they're always going to repeat that vertical line somewhere. In service, no matter what they come in, what quarter they work, they're working some application of PJJ. They're up and down that vertical line, and they're adding different applications. The students don't know what the day will be, the class will be, you know, as the instructor. But no matter what it is, you're giving them different applications for the same 9 things. And that way they get zillions and zillions of reps over time. So it's not like you did this once, now you move on, eventually you'll understand or you'll build later. The reps are always built in, and this is how you hide repetition so no one gets bored. By the time a recruit has a couple of weeks in, they've done thousands of arm drags. And then when you build off an arm drag to a stabilizer, when you're working that stabilizer, you begin with the arm drag. So now they're repping out that arm drag to a greater degree than the stabilizer. You had a resolution, you start back with the arm drag, there's a really wide line of arm drags, and then stabilizers a little bit less, and then that resolution is new. But as you keep building, that foundation gets wider and wider and wider as they're going up that vertical line. And the way it plays out is exactly what this graph shows. And if you can do your lesson plans, whether it's for an individual or a group, or it's in service for 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is you're doing, then we understand how best to create the greatest learning curve and the greatest technique retention and technical retention from our students. Going a step further, everything we do here on any given day, whether it's an entire class of brand new people, people that have been with us 12 weeks, or an in-service small framed officer class, whatever that might be, or 3 days, a seminar, it still plays off of this spiral learning. So they come in, they warm up with the core A.B.C.s, and then we start plugging in what the day's lessons are going to be. So you can have an entire group, and then you can monitor it from the outside and just simply walk around and then call out what you need cognitively, and then they're immediately doing it via association. They're applying it with their body in reference and in relation to pressures. Then you can add pressure, increase pressure, and then you basically are saying that cognitively, they are feeling it in an associative sense. As far as anything we do in the department, we never let it go too autonomous, because then you have too many people sparring and then the injuries occur. So your goal as an instructor is, over time, depending on who you're working with, because it's very unique, you have a sense of where you're at with those A.B.C.s, with that core as an instructor. And then you can start applying more and more pressure, heading towards that autonomy where they're basically free flowing, and then take that as far as you can with still maintaining control over your classroom. If it's a brand new class, you stay at that very cognitive associative end on this side, where it's very few things, the pressure's down low, and they're very technical, and you're looking at technical precision. But again, what we have found over and over again is, in a very short time, you're in that associative autonomous zone, which is the ideal. You know, that whole flow and all those philosophies about flowing through your techniques and moving slowly and then moving quicker from it and still staying within certain parameters. And then what happens is you get into these educational theories and educational sciences, which is basically what is now called ecological dynamics or ecological learning. That's a brand. Someone's going to say, well, it was developed in this year or that year. It's not like any of that is new. Anybody who's taught over a long period of time, going back to like the classical ages, had a sense of live training within certain parameters for a specific aim with a specific group, catering for safety and the highest level of technical understanding and accumulation. So it's no big deal. I use obviously what is systems theory, because when you're working with systems, I can include that brand, those parameters inside what I'm doing. Some people gets off on the concepts and principles. I can grab that and put it into the system. So systems theory, systems approach is what I use, because I can bring in the most to it, and I can tailor that menu to what I need. Hence spiral learning, because spiral learning can include the entire system, and it's a measure of making the system work for me and not getting loose into any particular system. So when I say systems theory, it's a very loose way of saying I'm going to systematically use everything at my disposal to improve the performance of those that I teach. And these are the ways that I have found are what gets me the greatest results No matter if my audience is a 5-year-old kid for his first class or it's a tier 1 group that has got a few weeks before they go on a specific mission that needs aspects of apprehension and combatives and transitioning, I'm still going to work this method. Why I tend to disapprove of training methods that I'm seeing in law enforcement, and I tend to feel like it's overcomplicated and it's going nowhere, which is where video 1 started. Because of everything we've discussed thus far, as we move into video 4, I'm going to start getting into why we don't do this, why we don't do that, and then there's tons of stuff happening where there's videos of law enforcement being applied, and then there's people critiquing it or seeing what mess it is or saying how successful it is and why. What I will do in the future is use some of that same footage that's being discussed out there and then look at it from a ISR Matrix police jiu-jitsu perspective, so we can take everything we've discussed so far and see where things could have gone better, where things could have gone a lot worse, because they weren't sticking to certain things that would have worked right away. Essentially, the whole idea of jiu-jitsu is efficiency. So our A.B.C.s are as efficient as it gets and as most transferable as it gets. And there's no need to go away from them at all, ever, if you're doing active resistance solo or in a group. Now, it's not to say, like I've said before, that you can do variations, but returning to them makes it so there's less injuries to you, to the suspect, and less liability for yourself and the department. And that will be what I think is the eye-opener for most. That said, without these videos 1 through 3, I don't think it would be understood, and people will be like, yeah, okay, but let's do knee rides, take the arm, yank it up this way, lift the head this way, and move this way. And I'll be like, you didn't get it. So I hope it makes sense to this point. I think it does. And as we go into video 4, that'll be probably the most abstract one. I'll get into exactly why we teach the way we teach and how it affects physiology and the science behind what we're doing. And that'll be the last video that deals with the education side of why we're doing things the way we are, the math of it, right? And then as we move into the video 5, 6, and so forth, it'll be very much example after example.
Since 2023, when Lewis took over, we switched from the system that was getting us injured and causing problems to where we are now. The data speaks for itself. The limiting injuries on our officers, the limiting lawsuits that we're getting, buying from the county attorneys, it speaks for itself.
But then we had the opportunity to meet Luis and what they were doing here at Mesa. He backs everything with data and physicians and everything for safety and all this stuff at the recruit level, but also at the agency level as well. Especially all the way up when there's lawsuits and things like that. It's worked really well.
At Mesa PD, it starts with us in the academy, and it starts with our defensive tactics. Most of you know that we're a PJJ agency. We have the data to support it. Every one of our recruits going through our three academies a year, it's about 180 hours each of our defensive tactics program. We see the results in the streets. We make time for cops to train on duty at each of the mat rooms that are stationed within out here as well. Super important to us. I'll just kind of sum it up. So since Lewis has been here with his BJJ program and his system, I should say system, since he's been here, they've had a decline of officer-involved injuries to 0, and recruit injuries to 0, and lawsuits down 95%. And paid out lawsuits down 92%, something like that. Probably it's in the 90s to say it's really good. Several agencies around Arizona, since they've sent their instructors to it, are now adopting it, just like Mesa has, and they're going to start doing it for block training and creating it, or using it as their system for their specific agencies.
And we really figured out how to do it correctly about a year ago, primarily when we brought this fine gentleman on board, Lewis, last November, and we've seen dramatic improvement in how our officers operate, how they communicate, how they take people into custody, injuries have dropped, we're not breaking hands anymore. So Officers are safer, suspects are safer, litigation has dropped